Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Joint Flows. Today we're joined by Harry Monkhouse. Harry is an AE at 6sense and he's the founder of OnRush Consulting. How are you, Harry?
Yeah, doing very well. Doing very well. I'm excited that it is Friday,
Yes.
and we are very close to the weekend. So I'll tell you what, after this week, I feel like I definitely needed a bit of a recharge.
Oh yeah, busy. Good busy.
Yeah, always good busy.
Uh, Amazing. Apologies for people watching the podcast. I'm wearing a hat because it's freezing in my house. So it's probably a one-off. But Harry, introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell them who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Harry Monkhouse. I am currently in a 6sense, and I've got my own consulting business called OnRush. Do you want me to go a little bit into my journey of maybe how I got there a little bit?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Perfect. So, yeah, I started out my actual career as a office designer, if you'd believe that. So I went to school and then at 18 I went straight into work and I started designing offices for about 3 and a bit years. And then I realized I didn't want to be stuck behind a computer screen anymore. Um, and I wanted a little bit of something else. So I moved to London, got myself into a sales role, and then worked from SDR to senior SDR to then being a team lead of the UK team at Datto, and then moved from that into SDR management, running the DAC and the UK and I team, and then transitioned into an AE role about 2.5 years ago. And then I've done my time at Terminus and then my time here at 6sense.
Amazing. What a career. What a career. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing out there.
Oh, so do you know what? It's been a really interesting thing because we've just gone through a little bit of a discussion actually internally around this. And I think what some of the things that we're seeing, right, and it's something that I've gone and tried out this week actually. Um, we're seeing a lot of people. Previously a lot of the things that I talk about, right, is like how do we expand into new geos, people that are moving into the enterprise space or down to SMB, or the focus is we need to just get more net new logos, right? It's very difficult at the moment. I'm not speaking to as many teams that are like, yeah, mate, 100% of pipeline. We're absolutely crushing it. It might be 100% of pipeline, but the revenue is not there, right? They're not converting as quick. Deals are taking longer. Sales cycles are taking longer. Deals are more complex. We've seen the buying groups have just increased by 20 to 30% this year. I always make the joke of I had never spoken to a CFO in as much detail before this year. And now I'm like, God, if I don't speak to a CFO, I'm like crazy panicked that I'm not going to get this deal over the line.
Yeah.
But one of the big changes that we're seeing is I'm speaking to a lot of CROs about stability and predictability within pipeline and revenue now, which I think is really interesting, right? Because now it's like, hey, Harry, like I'm getting to my forecasting call with my board and stuff like this, and I'm like panicked. And we're talking a lot more about like EBITDA models and a few other things. And I'm like, okay, so we're having to get into proper business things that are coming from the board now rather than just, hey, like I need X number of meetings now per month that we're currently got a 20% gap on. I need to fill that. So I think it's a really interesting shift, right? To having a bit more, it's about having confidence in the way that we're going to market rather than before where I think we were still using the same motions of like that kind of post-COVID stage. And I think we're slightly seeing that change.
Nice. I agree. Same. Like we keep on speaking about profitability, predictability, cost of sales, and uh, uh, really happy to have you on the podcast. Like we've got a lot of overlaps between our networks, so I've heard a lot about Harry. So I was excited to have you on the podcast. How do you upskill yourself to have these conversations with new stakeholders that you may never had before?
No, I think being fully transparent, right? I think there's a lot of it learning on the fly.
Yeah.
And I think you can do so much. You can do as much prep as you want, but I tell you what, the conversations I've been having with some CFOs and CEOs I've just never bbeen privy to those conversations before. I think the only thing that you can really do is, again, if you have a call recording software, go and find it. Like, I go and listen to a couple of the enterprise boys. They're having these conversations, right? So let me just go and hear some of the language that is happening. The big thing that I do lean on is I bring in the right stakeholders that can have that battle almost, or that alignment conversation where, hey, if I've got a VP on the call and they've got a CEO on the call, they can have that EBITDA model conversation that I'm not going to be able to articulate in the same way. So I think for me, it's been bringing in the right people, right? We talk about this, and I hate the fact that it's an American kind of say, but it's like, you as an AE, you are the quarterback, right? And you've got to bring the people in. You're calling the plays, or someone in the back end is calling the plays, and you're executing on them. So I do think there's an element of that, and I very much we try to have that within our business, of bringing in the right people at the right time to talk to the right people and have the right conversation. But I've learned a lot over the last couple of months around just listening in. So I don't think anything outside of that I can upskill, other than listen to more podcasts, speak to other people, listen to other reps. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I think upskilling is one element of it, right? But the other element is ensuring that you're in a position to have those conversations to begin with. So you don't necessarily start at the point with the C-suite, but you know what you said earlier on. Exactly. So what you said earlier on is, it's almost as if you don't get to that position, however, you're fearful that the deal's not going to happen, right? It's almost today, you know, it's the high probabilities, if you're not speaking with a C-suite member at some point, then you probably don't have a deal, because your competitor's probably in there, or they don't actually have a requirement and they're not going to spend the money here, right? So how is it that you get to the point where you ensure you're having this conversation before you then start in, you know, to equip yourself with the skill to be able to navigate the conversation?
Yes. Look, I think I spend a lot of time doubling down on like that, and that initial discovery is so important, right? Like, we think about like our sales cycle, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, right? Like, genuinely, is there a big enough pain to actually go, like, if I go and ask you to spend 50 grand on a software, is this pain big enough for us to solve? And if we can fundamentally articulate that reason, like, Harry, like, look, if we're not closing, I'm hearing this a lot, our targets are going up by 30% next year. We've already got a 10% gap. Harry, I don't know how we get to that number. I've just got no confidence. I've got the business buy-in, like that's a proper metric that we can take to that exec team. But I've also got their emotional buy-in at the individual level. And I think if we can articulate exactly within that process, like, here are the things that we're going to be able to go and help you with, or here are the things that we need to solve to warrant an investment like that, and that this is aligned with what the exec team are going to do. Because again, the execs have a top 3 things that they're trying to solve for. Trust me, if we're not on one of those top 3 things, we ain't getting signed off. So I think it's about getting that confirmation early, or at least an idea to that path, right? Okay, so how do you go and take this? What does the process look like? Like, you're not just going to turn up with a 50K contract and say, hey, by the way, 6sense or whatever tool you're selling solves this, and it's only going to cost us 50 grand, but this is the problem. You're not going to turn up and be like, can you sign here? Like, of course, we're going to have to build out some kind of motion, right? So I think that pain, or that reason why we would want to solve for it, is crucial, the why change element. And then it's really easy to then start to work out what is the path to that. And again, it's a lot easier in hindsight, right, than when we talk about it on a podcast. But I do think it's critical. Like, are we constantly testing it?
Yeah.
Do you
sorry. You go, Mick. You go. It's okay.
Have you found some efficient tactics for your champions to open the door to the CFO's office? I struggle. Like,
that's a great question, Mick. That's exactly what I was going to ask as well. We spent too much time together.
Like, we do struggle. We struggle on 2 sides. I think we struggle to get to kind of the IT decision maker. Like for us, it's RevOps, and there's no
Yeah.
and this is hard to get bandwidth to start with. So let alone getting the project approved. But with a CFO, it's always very, very complex to be getting in front of that person.
I'm not sure how much I should be giving away, but there's, look, I think there's a couple of things. I think, look, it's a lot. It is very unique to the business. It's depending on how many hats I think a CFO wears.
Yeah.
Like with the businesses that I tend to target, right, they wear a couple more hats than just the top dog at the top. So I think there's it's understanding how they've purchased technologies before. I think I've heard a couple of AEs on the podcast talk about this, right? Yeah. That's critical, right? Just to get a bit of an understanding. Also starting to understand, okay, like, I have interest, what does the CFO care about? Like, is it term? Is it contract length? Is it price? Like, are you thinking about, as a business, shorter term contracts but higher cost? Or are you thinking about a longer term partnership at a lower cost? Like, and you're starting to figure that out. We do a lot of exec alignment here. And I think that's critical, right? Whether it's they reply back and they go, yeah, I'd love to meet all of that. I think the important is that we do it a lot of the time. And I got onto a call, and my mobilizer was like, just so you know, your VP, our CEO emailed another CEO. It was like, by the way, that came up in our sales meeting as what we should be doing. The CEO was running the sales meeting, being like, hey guys, this is what a process should look like. Look at this exec alignment. Didn't reply, but it sparked a conversation internally. And I think sometimes of like, hey, have we qualified that they've actually had this conversation? Okay, is the CFO aware of the project? Yes. How aware? Oh, they know that we're speaking to X company. Okay, so have we put through why we're buying this? Have we started to discuss some of the example pricing that we've shared? No. Okay. So they're not really aware of the project. We just, again, it's that qualifying how to do it. I also think I've done it. I'm very transparent with some of my levers around negotiation. I think a lot of the time, my view is businesses make it very difficult to buy tech. And I hate the friction process. I actually not a massive fan of negotiating. Like at the end of the day, I want to get the best deal for the company I've been working with, because normally I get quite invested in the relationships and how I can help them. And I'm like, this is so critical for them. And I think some of the things that I think about here is like, look, I reckon I could go and build a bigger business case internally and get you more discount if you can put in writing that the CFO is going to sign off on this project. So I get an exec, I get CEO or CFO writing over email from them confirming that they are aware of the project and that they're happy to sign off on this.
Nice.
Like from a solution perspective. Pricing is a completely separate thing, right? That's my job as an AE to go and negotiate on their behalf and get them the best deal possible. So I use that and I'm like, look, I'm going to be totally transparent. I think I could go and get more money for you off if you can go and get this. It's just an easy give get, right? And I think that, and I most of my deals that works really well. The slightly bigger deals, that is like one of my go-to plays.
That's great. Love that actually, because you get validation that the project is real. You get validation that it's something that they're looking to invest in, and they can only solve whatever it is through change. So that's I've not heard that before. It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. I don't think we can do it with a team of two here. It's but let me ask Hitesh. Hitesh, what do you think? Yeah.
I think it's a one for further down the road for us. But yeah, that's great. That's really insightful. I mean, but what are some of the questions that you're asking to begin with to understand that you're in those top 3 objectives of the CEO?
Yeah, I think again, this is, I suppose, quite relevant, right? Because we're having a
Yeah.
lot of conversations about this, right? Like I think we're all aware of sales reps. Like it is hard out there at the moment, and it's hard to qualify. I think when I look at some of the things, it's like, okay, so like, what's the one metric that you're wanting to solve for at the moment? And like, no, I'm in a privileged position in what I sell, right? I've got 4 key pillars, and again, I'm still yet to meet a revenue leader, CEO, CFO that cares about one of these 4, right? So again, each business is different, but I'm looking at impacting win rates, sales cycle, ACV, and opportunity volume. Everyone wants a little bit more of everything, right? Or decreasing sales cycle. Everyone wants a bit of that. But it's starting to understand, right? Hey, look, here's just some of the pillars that we impact for our customers. What is the number one for you at the moment? What do you need to go and solve? And like, hey, but also on the other hand, like we're starting to think about like we bracket into where they're currently today, what are the challenges, and where they want to be in the future. Like, look, if we speak in a year's time, like what's the one successful metric that we're going to be scoring whether this was the right investment or not? And a lot of the time it's like, oh, hey, it's this, but and you get into the weeds, right? And they give you a long-winded answer, and we hear all the time, well, Harry, it's all of them. Well, no, it can't be all of them. It can't be, because that's a huge amount to go and solve. Now, whether we solve for that is different, right? We do, right? We can go and impact each one, but like, what is critical for you at the moment as a business to move the needle the most? And a lot of the time at the moment, we're hearing around cycle times, because I'm speaking to people that are like 12, 18 months. And I've been speaking to companies where they're like, our deal cycle time's probably 100% further on where we want it to be. We just cut it in by 100% almost of where we think. And, or well, 50%. But it's having that understanding, like, so you're telling me if we solve just that one thing, then we're in a position to move forward with a platform like this of an investment of this cost. And if the answer is still critically yes, and we've all got every single buy-in, and by the way, we're seeing more and more stakeholders, so we need to get that qualified by every single person's vote, then we're in a good position. But if we can't answer that question or have that kind of conversation, then is this really a project, or are we just doing a bit of research?
Yeah. I think it's very important that you get that understanding early on, right? Is this a genuine project? Is it not? At the same time, you don't want yourself or your team wasting time on opportunities that are not real.
Yeah.
And by the way, the only thing and it's okay that we don't know this on the first call. Like it's just the same thing. Like I've literally just been speaking to someone, and we're probably like 6 calls in. And I've gone, and I won't share you the exact thing that they're trying to solve, but I'm like, I'm not sure I'm 100% confident, right, in the answer that we're having here, right? I'm unsure when we take this to the board that this is the thing that they're going to be going, right, we now need to invest in this, like 100%. And I've just gone in, hands up, been like, I think we're in a really good spot, but I'm not 100%. And before I go and do X, Y, and Z for you, which, by the way, I've calculated about 15 hours of workload for us internally, and I've included 3 other people that will need to help me to do so. Like, can we just nail this question? Like, genuinely, like, what do you think this person in the board and this person in the board is going to be caring about? And they're like, and they actually said, they were like, oh, that's like, I'm having to present to the board in 2 weeks, and I'm maybe not sure on that question. And I'm like, right, okay, let's pause here, get this critically. And look, if they're a good champion or a good mobilizer, they will spend time with you on that. And I think that's a really good way to test it. Sometimes going in the call and just being like, hey guys, like, I'm not confident. I'm not sure if we can categorically help you. And I do that so much now. I do a lot of upfront contract work. It's very big here. And on the first call, I'll give you an opt-out. But Mike, I know you wanted to, I know you wanted to ask something. So,
I think that's really, challenging. Often you feel like I don't want to rock the boat too much because what if and what if and what if I lose the deal out of the questions I'm asking. But I think if you got a good champion and you're working on something that's strategic for the business, people are usually quite receptive to being nudged a little bit harder than usual, and you may have saved that person credibility, in the next board meeting, and I think people are grateful for this.
Yeah, and I want to make them look good. Like that's my job. I'm huge on emotional buying. Huge on emotional buying.
Yeah.
Even me and my partner have just bought a house together, and even then, working with the estate agent, I was like, "So how do you get paid?" And he was like, "Oh, the amount the house closes for." I'm like, "Okay, so you're basically incentivized for it to be as much as possible, right?" He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Okay, so just talk to me about how your quarter's going." And like, oh, and then he was like, "Being honest, Harry, this is my second week as a proper estate agent," and I was like, "Fantastic! I've got your emotional buy-in. I will be your first deal." And I was like, "But you need to do it. You need to do this, this, and this." I know that sounds like a bit of a prick, but like I've had like stuff like that. I'm huge on emotional buying. Like, what's this going to do for your career?
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's like, hey, like, I need to do this, or I want to be here. I want to be here. Like, what's your personal gain? And a lot of the times, it's around promotions. I want to be leading the team. I want to be this. I want to be this. I want to look good like this. I want this person to look good at. And as soon as you've got that, you've got something else. Like, hey, how do we solve for the business? But how do we solve for you? And that's I think critically how we start to think about building some of these champions as well.
Yeah. And you've got a bit of a, obviously with your experience and what metrics you're currently impacting, a bit of a dual profile between pipeline coverage and then pipeline conversion. What's your take on the former? Anything to do with email prospecting and cold calling and all of this?
So how I build pipeline?
Yeah, and how do you feel about how things are evolving? Like we see a lot of one thing I struggle with at the moment is email prospecting is becoming exponentially harder, and regardless of the level of personalization, I can't beat a company who's got 600 mailboxes plugged in going against the same person I'm targeting.
Yeah, look, I think it goes through like different flows, right? We went through a stage of going cold call is the only way, and then it was like email is the only way, cold calling's and it's constantly changing, right? But I think what we've got to look at is data backs it up. How many emails, how many outreaches are people getting a day? And I think if I look at statistics, right, people get more emails than they do cold calls or LinkedIn outreach. Now that I categorically believe in staged approaches, right? Like, for example, if I was selling to you guys, and you just started researching for something, like I don't need to message you and call you up and like, do you want to book a meeting? Do you want to book a meeting? You don't need to deliver hard call to actions early on in a buying journey. What I deliver, and whether I teach this through my consultancy or through or practice it in my current role as an AE, I'm looking at what we call ABH, which is always be helping, and I've nicked that from someone here where I work. And it's about how I deliver value to people that are early on in the buying journey. Now, look, if you'd gone in and spent, and again, privy because I've got a technology that tells me who's in market and wants to buy a technology from me in the next 90 days, right? I'm in a very privileged position. But even with that, you can start to gauge some kind of insights for people that don't have any of those technologies. But I'm wanting to provide as much value as early on as possible. So I don't need to go, do you want to book a meeting? Do you want to discuss this? Like, hey, why don't I just send you a podcast? And it might be an external one. It might be an internal one. Like, why don't I send you a free book? Why don't I get you registered to a community? Like my objectives as an AE are not to think about booking meetings every week. My thing, some of my big wins are like, I look at my book of business. Let's say I've got 100 accounts. I've got 100 accounts. Can I get this quarter 30% of my book of business signed up to our main community? Because we know We've got data that backs, once you're in our community, you're surrounded by people that have bought the technology. We're speaking about ABM practices. Like, there is no way that eventually you start to think about our technology as something you might want to consider for your business. It's just facts. So a lot of this stuff I'm leading with is around how can I help? Now, in regards to how I deliver a strategy, I think email is massively overcrowded at the moment. I think you've seen a lot of technologies coming up about like domain bouncers using additional domains, right? I think there's a lot of that still that we need to be more educated on as a community of sellers about how that all works. I still think there's a bit of a black box feeling to it.
Yeah.
But I think, and I've seen this through my consultancy, right? I work with probably some companies that I've partnered with are a bit more immature in the sense of their outbound motion. Some are hungry to do it the right way. But I think some of the times that you've got to be thinking about is you've got to critically be thinking about a multi-channel strategy. This is email, phone, and LinkedIn. I still think people that are not using LinkedIn are massively missing out, because I'll tell you what, LinkedIn converts higher than any other channel for me by a country mile. Because again, I've taken that time to build a bit more of a personal brand, so I can leverage a lot of more of my own content to deliver helpful, and I can use the SDRs of London as a SDR community to speak to certain people. But I think you've got to be thinking about using in multiple channels. But also, further point to that is, I was actually speaking to a sales leader today. People just go and put people in a cadence, click play, and run it for 35 days, and they go, why didn't I book the meeting? Why didn't it work? And it's like, of course it bloody didn't work. Like, that's fundamentally like you're just a robot clicking a button saying, hey, I think this is the right person. Let's just go and deliver this strategy. That's not how we should be thinking about an outbound process. We should be constantly reviewing. Did someone open an email? If someone opened your email, give them a call. It's one of the highest converting ways to get a phone call, right? Is they're engaging with your content. They're clicking it. Call them. How did you know that? Again, use tool like an Outreach, a Sales Loft, a Gong. It becomes really, really easy. And I think, I think that's probably our biggest problem, is people don't use what I call cadence triggers or sequence triggers enough to go, hey, we found out X.
Yeah.
So let's pause what we're doing, revisit the hypothesis and the strategy of why we were doing this in the first place. And then let's change that messaging so that we're delivering the right experience. Like, if you go and have a cold call with someone and find out X, Y, and Z the challenge, what do? You don't just like carry on as you were. You stop and you say, now we know these challenges. Here's the strategy I should be delivering to them, or the outbound approach I should be delivering to them.
Okay, that makes sense. And so if you, as someone who kind of talks a bit about both, right, the top of the funnel and within the funnel itself as well, where do you think the strategy starts and ends? Is it getting pipeline coverage, or is it around managing, ensuring you're executing the deals that are sitting within your pipeline first?
It's got to be both at the same time. It's got you've got to, like, for me, I go through waves. I always look at myself as I'm never going to have an issue with creating pipeline. I'm very confident in my ability to be able to go and create pipeline.
Yeah,
because I've had weeks where I'm like, man, I'm running short here, and I'm like, I haven't got the coverage. Right, lockdown 2 weeks, and I'm like, right, back at the top. It's just default BDR in me. It's like, right, hammer the phones, hammer LinkedIn, hammer emails, get it to as many people as possible. Of course, using the platform to prioritize and stuff like that. But I also think the area around, and something I definitely want to develop more on, is this like pipe progression. What I think about a lot, right, and something that I'm challenging my manager on, how do we do this effectively together each week. And we're starting to create a really, really good process, which is, when I look at a deal, at any stage of the buying journey, whether it's discovery phase, whether we've had the team demo, whether we've done the live data review and shown them their data in the platform, whether we've done all of that, what are the 3 things that are going to move the deal the most on that particular stage at each point? Like, what could I be doing? And I think what happens first is understanding the bigger picture, right? Which is probably at all stages, what are the 20 things that you could be doing? But then taking a step back and going, well, these are the 3 things for that particular account. Based on their use case, based where they are, these are the 3 things. And a lot of the time, it's the same answers. Multi-threading.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? Am I speaking to enough people? And then you start getting into this, what were you talking about earlier? CEO, CFO, right? You start to get the votes. Hey, is this person where? Is this person where? This person would need to be involved. And the more conversation you have, the better you are. But yeah, it's easier said than done.
Multi-threading I find extremely useful, and I think the other thing for me is early exec alignment. I think you spoke about, you know, man marking CFO, CEO, CTO, CTO. And I think if you do that early on, your chances of success, they go through the roof. Like it's really hard to get to a level where I have progressed this opportunity. And you know what? The entire buying committee already knows about it. And there's something in it for every single one of them because these conversations have happened. How do you manage that internally because there's obviously an element of prioritization, and you might have, I don't know, across the team, maybe 200 deals, but only one CFO. How do you build that internal brand?
No, I think when you'll know, right? You know, I know, I'm very aware that I can't go to my CEO and be like, every single time I have a meeting that I think is good, I want you to email their CEO. Like, you just can't do it. We've got processes in place here, right, where we know how to deliver a good formal exec alignment process, right? Whether that's through a CRM, whether that's through an Excel doc, whether that's through an executive assistant, whether that's directly, right? You can't bring an exec up to, and again, like, we're a 1,500 person company. There is no way that our CRO, she's getting insight into all 300, 200 sellers or doing, right? There's just no way. So I think when you look at it, right, coming back to my previous point, what are the top 3 things that could move the needle on that deal? And by the way, when I say move the needle, I'm not talking about always has to be forward, because we get as much clarity moving backwards as we do moving forwards. But if we're stuck in the same process and we're not getting anywhere, that's when we have to go, oh, okay, let's pause. Let's take a second. So I think I think you have a gut instinct around the plays. And I think when you've built a good champion, like I've got a particular guy and I'm constantly messaging him. Like, do you think it's time? Do you think it's time we get the CEO to reach out to your CEO? He's like, okay, I'm not sure. Okay, why? Okay, because I haven't had this conversation with him yet. Okay. And again, you're using that as a qualification. Like, the last thing I would never, ever go and ask any of my exec team to go and message someone without running it by a champion or multiple stakeholders that I'm already speaking to. Because what's the point then? Like, hey, there's certain things like I'm constantly thinking about, like, again, it's slightly different sometimes when we have events execs going to the same dinner. And I'm not then going to go and ask someone for their permission to, like, they're already going to go and have dinner and have drinks together. Like, I don't, that should just be a quick, like, hey, see you going to the dinner, looking forward to seeing you there. So I think there's the certain plays, but I think when the play, and especially when you test it, right, use that as a testing point within that play that you're having with your champion, for sure.
Yeah. One thing you spoke about is about knowing when's the right time to bring that resource in, right? And we've been speaking about exec alignment, but sometimes through the selling process, you need to involve legal. You might need to involve, someone from pre-sales, a multitude of people you can bring in. When you're working at a company who's relatively sizable, you've got a decent sized sales team as well, who are all managing multiple deals in flight. How is it that you're able to get your workload prioritized before anyone else? It sounds a little bit selfish, but every salesperson ultimately wants to make sure their deal closes, right? You're getting towards the end of the quarter. Yourself, your mate Joe, your mate Max, you've all got deals, right? You all want to get the attention to get it over the line. What do you do to make sure you get that attention?
No, I think that probably comes back to one of my points earlier, Ryan, about some of my gift gets. Like I'm very, very, very transparent through my sales process. Look, I don't feel like I've got a good business case to go and get you the discount you need. So like genuinely, I'm thinking about like, hey, I need these things, right, to go and make enough noise. Now, look, I'm in a privileged position, or I'm in a mere team of 60 people in a company of 1,500. With time zones, we get a little bit of priority, right? To go and shout a bit louder than everyone else because we're trying to grow a region at a rapid rate. But I do think it's about how I deliver that business case. As much as when they go and take this to their CFO, I'm building a business case to my VP and my finance team. Like, hey, look, here's critically why they need to go and buy a technology like this. Look, we've already challenged them. Like, what's really important for us is vendor of choice. Very, very rarely will I be thinking about negotiating prior to that conversation, because then we just become to a rat race, right? Which is who can get the lowest. Which means I haven't done a very good job of making sure that this solution is categorically the solution that you need to be partnering with. And if we're in that limbo land, I feel very unconfident that I've done my job correctly, right? It should be, hey, Harry, like, we've decided that you are vendor of choice. That allows us to then take that internally and go, look, okay, they're exclusively going to move forward with us. So we've secured that. So we're not having to do a rat race. Here's the problem and the metric they're trying to solve, and here's the implication of what that's going to have. But also what we've already started to talk about is some of the term length. We've started to talk about whether it's a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, net 30, payment terms. We've already started to agree on some of those things. Again, hey, they're wanting this, this, and this. Pause. What is the most important thing for them? And then once I've got those answers, it becomes very easy to then go and request the resources and the allocation, right? And even if it's early on or in the deal, again, coming back to, is this a big enough pain that you would invest X amount of money in X amount of time? Because if not, I'm going to really struggle to go and get a guy to go and spend 10 hours doing some data stuff for you. Because again, when we think about markets where a lot of people are maybe doing research, or EBs are different in the sense that my EB used to be a CMO or a CRO. I'm now a CFO. I hate getting to the end of a deal where I've got a contract out and the CFO going, nope, that's not getting signed. And it's like, right, okay, I've just spent weeks on a deal that isn't going to close. So again, it's all about that qualification, isn't it? But again, a lot easier said than done on a call like this.
I like it. It's just about making sure your deal's solid. And if it's solid, you'll get the access that you need, I guess.
Yeah. Constantly testing why change, why now?
Yeah, amazing. Well, Harry, it's been a pleasure having you. I think we're almost out of time. So we do have a wrap-up question, which if you have listened to some of the episodes, you would have expected to come your way. What is your favorite memory in your career to date and why?
My it's going to have to be my first ever cold call.
Oh yeah, tell us about it.
So I did some cold call, and basically we had a boot camp when I first started, right? You do a month, you spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a hotel, you do some training, right? And I remember we did some playing testing, and I'm not going to lie, I was pretty bad on the phone. Like I just felt so nervous. By the way, I thought I was going to be like the bee's knees. I was like, I can talk for England. Like this is going to be so easy. Get to like actually making like cold calls, even in a role play. I was like, oh my God, I'm literally shaking. Then when I actually got to my first call, so I found this company of a guy that was in Newcastle that was setting up an MSP business. And again, I targeted like one-man bands up to like 300-person businesses when I first started. And he wasn't in the system. So net new prospect, called him up, and first call, booked the meeting. He then ended up buying full suite, so all of our 6 different products over the first 12 months, and then became a really successful company. So like, it's one of those ones where it's like, mate, first cold call I ever made, booked the meeting, booked 2 meetings on that guy, then went on to close within the first month of me being there. And it was just, that was such a great feeling, because then I think it took the pressure off, but it meant that I felt a bit more confident in what I was doing. So I will always remember that first cold call, for sure.
Amazing. It's never as bad as you think it's going to be, right? You'd jumped in there and ended up being great.
Yeah,
all right.
Just people at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Well, look, Harry, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Joint Flows. Until next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, bye.